This is Gray Cunningham, and you are listening to the Butterfly Kisses podcast, a journey of spiritual transformation. It has been my pleasure to speak with some amazing people who have had profound spiritual awakenings. Throughout these conversations, may you experience a life filled with joy, love, and personal growth. Now let's get going. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Butterfly Kisses, a journey of spiritual transformation. I am your host, Gray Cunningham, and today we are joined by Margaret Agard, who is an award-winning author, former executive of a high-tech industry, and get this, ladies, mother of 8 children and a stepmother to 7. She also has grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and that is a lot to juggle, I am sure. But she's a Christian mystic and a Reiki level 2 healer. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. So I'm curious to hear what she thinks and how she works with that. She's currently writing her 3rd memoir titled Love, Becoming One with Parker, from her house next to the lake in Florida. It's a viewing lake, not a swimming lake, because there's, alligators. Yeah, I wouldn't go swimming in that either. And I wouldn't be anywhere quite near that. But Margaret focuses on helping others live a life of true purpose and joy with one simple daily practice. And one of the things she does is she lets go and lets God by giving him her to-do list. So everyone, please help me welcome Miss Margaret to the show today. Margaret, thank you so much for joining me. Yay, you have a lot to do.
Thank you, Amy. I'm happy to be here with you, or sort of. It would be nice to be with you, but yeah, it's nice to just connect.
Yes, and yes, I would love to sit down and have a cup of tea or coffee and just sit and chat. That would be so much fun. You seem like a very fun person to be around. Just your energy and the aura that you give off is just awesome.
Oh, good.
So I love it. So tell us about you. Who is Margaret? And how did you come across giving away your to-do list to God?
It was a moment of desperation. It was truly that. Now, I, as a child, had an experience where I was in a particular church one day, and up to then, and I just felt something, like felt a presence. Mm-hmm. And up to then, I could say I had learned a lot about God and being a Christian Jesus, but that day I felt like I met him. Ooh. I was about 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. And then I was 8 or 9. When I would get upset, I would just go read scriptures, read books of divinity, whatever your divinity is. And I would feel very calm and peaceful. And so then when I was in my 20s, I started asking, how do I hear your voice? Because someone said, I know after you pray, you're supposed to wait until you feel like you're getting an answer and God's talking to you. And I was like, what? I just said those prayers, got up and took off. And at that point is when I said, I need to learn how to hear your voice. I do write about that in the book, the experience I had, but a lot of people feel like they can hear that voice. They know when they're getting messages. And so what happened is I had reached a point in my 40s. I was a single mom. I was divorced. I had 8 children, sole financial support. They were mostly older, like middle school, and a few starting college, but still living at home. And I had decided to finish my degree. So when I first started in the computer industry, you just had to be smart. But then it would be helpful if you had a degree now, because we're going to go after public offerings. So looks good. And I had about a year left. So I was going to school full time. And between the 8 kids still at home, working full time to support us, the 9 of us, and then going to school full time, I was overwhelmed. So people will be like, oh, I don't have time to ask God what to do. I was like, oh, well, see, that's the point. It wasn't like I was sitting around with a ton of time on my hands. I was more desperate to know what I really had to do each day, because it seemed no matter what I did, it was the wrong thing. But often I would do something only to have it turn out that I really didn't need to have done that day. I would show up at clients and they would be saying, we've talked it over since the last time you were here. We're completely changing the direction we want to go. So I'd have all this information ready and a presentation and reports, and they'd be basically saying, no, I don't need to see it. And then I'd show up for a class and there'd be a note on the door. I'd have a paper. Oh, the professor's sick. You don't really need to turn that in until Friday. And so that's kind of how I was. I was like, there were other things I could have been doing. And I thought, if I could only see the future, what to do or what not to do. And then I thought, well, I know who does know the future. And so I thought, well, I'm going to start asking God. So I take this 3x5 card or sometime a whole sheet of paper with everything listed that I had to do. And then I would have ordered it. This is 1, 2, and 3, how we do our priorities, right? And at that point, I was getting about 4 hours sleep a night and often woke up in the middle of the night, just panicked, thinking, what did I forget? What's been left undone that I should have done? But I started taking this list and asking God, what do I need to do today? Because you can see the future. And I could feel those answers. Like when you learn to hear that voice, I could just, as I looked at things, I think I don't have to do this. And then sometimes I would question, well, how come I don't have to do that? I get a little thought. And I just go through. And then after a few weeks, he started adding some things like, don't do this, don't do this. But I do want you to make a certain call. That's how my life changed. And as I focused only on what he told me to do, because you know how we are, especially if you're kind of a type A personality, you think, oh, an extra hour, maybe I'll write a book. I don't know what I'll do. Maybe I'll make a quilt, all this extra time. It was like, no, don't add anything, just do this. And if I focused on just the things I was given to do divinely, then I was finished every day by 8 and I could relax. I learned after only a few weeks that I could really trust that voice, that I was getting done what absolutely needed to be done, and the other things turned out to not matter. They got handled in some way or weren't needed anymore. So now I was getting
actually do the to-do list. You didn't create the to-do list. You actually heard God give you the list, and that's the list.
I didn't want you to do some on your own. So I would always take a list to him. Here's what I have planned. Like I have this paper due. My son has to go to the doctor to get his physical so he can play basketball in high school. Just lists like that. Typical, I'm a working woman going to school. I have this paper due. Here's all these things that I say have to be done. Plus, I should probably stop by the bank, move some money from one account to another, things like that, right? And so then I would look at the list I had made, and often it would be, don't worry about that, don't worry about that. And then, but do this. And then I would add some things. Now, this went on long enough that eventually I began to get some fairly strong impressions. At that point, I was still in college, trying to finish up that last year in my 40s. And the thought came, you should get this environmental management minor. And I thought, I don't even know how to add that. I'm just trying to get it done. I just want to pound it out. I have enough credits for a degree in math, computer science, get that done. What is this environmental management? But so I thought, okay, so I checked with the university and they actually had a certificate. I only had to take a few classes, but they were all upper level. And I can remember going in to this biology professor, trying to get him to sign off to let me take an upper level biology class when I didn't have the prerequisite underlevel. And I can remember him signing the paper. And even as he was signing it, saying, I never do this. I don't know why I'm doing this, because God wants you to. And one of the first things I did after I got that degree was work in the environmental field running computer models. So it all worked out. Just odd things. But really what worked is he answered my prayers. I want to say leading me in directions that I didn't know that's where the answer was going to be. I was praying at that time for a friend. I just wanted a friend, a huggy friend. That's what I want. Someone I could talk to, because my marriage had just ended. I just wanted a good friend. And one day the thought came, I want you to take a part of your dinner over to this family that lives a couple blocks away. I'd seen them at church, but I didn't know them. And I took it, and the wife came to the door. We met, but she wrote about it later. She said, this woman showed up with a dinner. I don't even know if I needed the dinner, but I was so depressed and discouraged that day. And here she is. And I thought, I really want to get to know this woman. And over a few months, we did spend more time together, and we became like third grade best friends, except we could drive and had money.
Those are the best.
I know, it wasn't like God said to me, make this meal, she's going to become your best friend. It was just, here's something I want you to do today. And so often I found that when I was performing some kind of service or help for another person, that was where my answer was. It either led to something like it did with her, becoming my best friend, or I would spend my time doing it and somehow he would take care of the things that I wasn't doing because of that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
There's a story in my book called Manure. I'm telling you this because it shows somehow how he answered. I don't know how he does it, but my husband wanted manure. He had a 2,000 square foot greenhouse. The house was like 500 square foot. The greenhouse was 2,000 square feet. And he wanted manure for it. And we lived near Yosemite National Park at that point in California. And he knew they had pack animals and he was trying to get the manure. And they would say, no, he lived too far away. He tried for years to get manure. And he had found some place where he could get manure, but it would take him half a day to get a pickup truck load. And at some point, you can't put manure in your garden. You're past the date because it'll just burn stuff up. And he kept helping people. People would call, like their car was broken, a single mom with her beater car, and she needed to get to work, and he'd go over and fix it. I remember this one day, young mom had called just home from the hospital with an infant. We lived in the country, and her well had stopped working. And they didn't have much money. And so he said, okay, well, I'll go over and fix that. And so every day he would get up saying, I'm going to go get manure. Instead, he'd end up doing something like that. So he's over there fixing her well. And all of a sudden we get a phone call from Yosemite saying, hey, we have some manure. Do you want it? I said, definitely, we want that manure. And they showed up. And I have never seen a truck this big. It was like a tractor trailer filled with manure. And we live in the country, fortunately. They dumped it in our front yard. It looked like a mountain of manure. It was like 10 pickup loads of manure in our front load. There aren't a lot of men who would come home and be happy to see a mountain of manure in their front yard. But for my husband, this was like, yay. So that's what I'm trying to say, that often we're doing things and we just get blast for it. It wasn't like God told him how to go get manure, but he somehow got manure. Yeah.
Because he was doing
what God asked him to do. He was just doing the right stuff.
And yeah, what you put out into the world is what you get back. Manure.
Perfect. Yes.
I love it. Do you think, and I'm going to ask this question because it's one that I don't know if other people are thinking, but there's so many things going on in the world with Ukraine and shootings and all sorts of other things. Do you think that it's fair for us to ask God for
manure
and to handle our little petty requests when there's so much other things going on in the world that could be so much bigger?
I think God looks at each of us individually. When he looks at the war in Ukraine, we're thinking, oh my gosh, 500,000 immigrants. He's thinking whatever Ukrainian names are. I need to help Sylvia. I need to help George. Mm-hmm. And he is infinite. We are limited. We are limited by time. He lives outside of time. He's not limited by time. We're limited by, here's how much we think the material world can produce. And he's infinite. There's all this stuff. So he can handle the war in Ukraine and helping your teenage daughter find the perfect prom dress for $20 at a thrift store. He can do that. And he's not like us, that he feels not taking time away from the Ukraine to help us. And he loves us. And I feel like often when I've helped people, it has been someone like that girl who was home with an infant and no water in her house, no way to get out of her house to get water. And I think that the people in Ukraine are being helped often as individuals. We see some big agencies going over, probably helping. My cousin's daughter lives in Germany, and they have a family from the Ukraine living with them. And she said, They've been there longer than they had thought they would be, longer than the people from the Ukraine had thought they would be. And yet that to me is how the Lord works, how that voice works. Once I knew a woman at church, a very small church, only about 40 of us showing up, and her house had burned down. And we lived in a rural part of Appalachia at the time, and she had no fire insurance. So basically she had nothing. And someone gave her an RV to live in. And at some point I'm sitting at church and God's like, build her a house. And that's the kind of thing that I'm like, why are you telling me to build her a house? I don't know anything about building a house. Okay. And even half later, we had a house for her. I spent all week just on the phone getting donations and getting people to come out and help on the weekends. And it wasn't a very big house. It's only about 600 square feet, but it was big enough. She was single.
Mm-hmm.
I think our answers are like that, like my cousin's children who thought we should take someone from the Ukraine and did. Or God saying to me, I want you to do something that looks too big for you to do, but you can do it. I want you to build this person's, make sure they get a house built. And sometimes it's just like I make phone calls. Yeah. How do I feel about that? I didn't have a friend. I was just reading her story that something was going on. She was in Europe and she collected up a bunch of clothes and food and stuff to take to, who knows what was going on then, because there's always something, maybe the people fleeing from the Mideast.
Mm-hmm.
And when she got home with it, she felt like the Spirit, God said to her, that was good. Now I want you to go across the street and get to know your neighbor and help her.
Are you searching for a deeper connection with the unseen world? Well, then look no further. I am Amy Gray Cunningham, and I invite you to explore the realms beyond the ordinary. As a gifted medium, I've spent years honing my abilities to bridge the gap between our world and the spirit realm. My unique approach to mediumship combines intuition, empathy, and a profound understanding of the unseen energies around us. Through a mediumship session, I can help you connect with your loved ones who have passed on, providing comfort, healing, and profound insights. Whether you're seeking closure, guidance, or simply a sense of peace, my mediumship sessions provide a secure and nurturing space for you to delve into the mysteries of the afterlife. Join me today on a transformative journey as I channel messages from the other side, offering validation, clarity, and a profound sense of connection to those who have crossed over. Book your mediumship session with me today. A typical session lasts about 50 minutes, giving us ample time to connect and for you to experience the power of a spiritual connection. So visit my website at amygraycunningham.com to schedule your session. Now get ready to unlock the healing that awaits you. Now, how do you know it's God's voice that you're hearing and not some random crazy
ADHD? That's right. I have that question. Is this God or is this my ADHD acting up? Yes, that's how I feel. So I did have to learn to recognize that voice. And often the thought will come more than once because I do think it's just me. And yet not always, because it will be something I wouldn't have thought to do. If that makes sense. I wouldn't sit there think I should build that woman a house. Maybe I would have crossed my mind and then I would have blown it off and I would never have thought of it again. But when it keeps coming back, that's when I begin to think, oh, this is God. So it continues to come back and very soft. And then when I do it, people will say, I've been praying for them. And so as I've gotten skilled at it, I question it less. Like, is this God or not? I know when it is because I've heard it so often. This is something I started in my 40s and now I'm in my 70s. So you play the piano every day for 30 years, you could probably play it pretty well compared to the first day you sat down. Yeah. And often he uses words that I know but don't use. Very clear and concise. My husband and I went on missions, and one of them was going to Alaska, up north of the Arctic Circle. And I can remember thinking, okay, I've got bear spray and I've got a down coat. I think I'm ready. So I was like, what else should I do to get ready? And I asked that question, and the thought came immediately: take a brisk walk every day. Now, I know the word brisk. I never use it in conversation. It's not something that comes out of my mouth. But I knew it was very clear, very concise, and brisk. I knew it meant I didn't have to take up running marathons. But also I couldn't get out and just walk along, taking a stroll, smelling the roses. I had to get my heartbeat up. So those are a few ways I've learned to understand the difference. And sometimes I'll say, is this you? Is this you?
Do you ask for signs at all?
Not very often, but sometimes when it's very, very important, I have asked for a sign. And that's in the Bible too, where I forget who is supposed to go fight with, who knows, the Hittites or something. And he's thinking there's so few of us and so many of them. And he's like, okay, if this is you, when I wake up in the morning, I want the ground around me to be covered with dew, but not the sheepskin I'm laying on. And that happens. So I was like, all right, but don't get upset at me with God, but tonight, in order for me to know it's really you, I want the sheepskin to be covered with dew and the ground to be dry. And that happens. I know it's okay to occasionally ask for a sign. And there was a time I was a stay-at-home mom, and I really felt that I needed to go to work and take care of the family, that we were never going to be able to count on my first husband. And it was difficult for me to do. And this was years ago, before we had cell phones and stuff, and long distance calls are expensive. And I can remember saying, if this is from you, then I would like my father to call me and confirm that. And 5 minutes, the phone rings. It's my dad calling me long distance. And I pour out my whole story and why I don't think I should go to work and my kids need me at home, like that, right? And he said, I know it's going to be hard, but you have to do it. So that was my first step on my path to becoming an executive in the high-tech industry.
Way to listen. That's awesome.
I think he has compassion on us, don't you, Amy? Yeah.
Yeah. Wouldn't you? You have compassion on your children. Yeah. So how does Reiki play a role in what you do? And first of all, for those who don't know what Reiki is, can you explain what Reiki is?
Reiki is a form of energy healing, and you get tuned to Reiki so that you can pull energy up, and good energy that's healing to people. And I actually wanted to become a massage therapist. And the very first day of class, the person teaching the class said, okay, but the first thing I'm going to do is attune you to Reiki, because it'll make you a better massage therapist. I hadn't heard of it till then. And he did. And I could actually put my hands on people and just feel this heat. And they would say, oh, I feel that. I feel that heat coming through my body. You really just stand there and let it happen. And so I'd probably been there a month. And I did a lot of Reiki. I liked it. I like people to give me Reiki, Reiki. And so I said, well, is this Christian? Should I do this? And the thought came, I've read the Bible enough, that all things good come from God. And the West doesn't have a corner on all good things. And I started thinking about Christ. Did Christ touch people? And the second level of Reiki, you can do distance healing. And so you can send energy to people. That's healing. And I thought about Christ. This centurion came and said, hey, my servant's sick. Could you heal him? And he stood up to go. And the man said, no, you don't have to go. Just do it. Such faith. And so I think about that I can do distance healing. And the other thing I do is contemplative prayer, where I just sit and let God talk to me. I'm not trying to talk to him. It's more, I think, a form of Christian meditation, where you just quiet your thoughts and then just let the Holy Spirit speak. Although sometimes I'm bored with it. And so I do remember once saying, I don't understand how you know what's happening everywhere. I just don't get it. And he showed me a picture with a spider's web, a giant web. And he said, everything's connected and I can feel what's going anywhere. And you can connect too. So a few weeks later, I thought, I still am kind of bored. And he said, really, honestly, you wonder why I even try to be spiritual. trying to meditate. And I'm like, so bored. And then he said, you can just send love out. You can just send love out on that web. You could pick someone, or you can just send it out generally. You could send it to a neighbor. You just can be here in the spirit, part of the web, sending love, which I found.
We're all part of the web.
Yeah, we're all part of the web.
Mm-hmm. We all come from the same source.
The same source. That's right.
Web. And it's all love. Isn't that wonderful?
Hard to remember.
Yeah.
Now, I am an oldest daughter, and I have 10 brothers and sisters. And if you ever had an older sister, you're the older sister, you know what we're like.
I'm an older sister. So.
There you go. Bossy, and probably sticking our noses even when we don't need to, but we're pretty sure it's needed. Because I tell people I'm a recovering oldest daughter. So what happens to me when I'm with people that I'm helping or giving rides to is sometimes I just am so upset with them, so judgmental. And I said, I really want to get over this guy, but I don't know how. And he said, Margaret, you don't have to solve their problems. So I'll be sitting there, because usually as an oldest daughter, guess what? You do have to solve the problems. That was your job from the time you were little. How come you let your brother do this? Well, I don't know. You know how this happened. Now you know you're going to keep doing that your whole life. And so I will be driving along, I'll be with someone, I'll be thinking that, oh, great, now she's really going to make a mess of her life. Then we're going to have to step in and help her. And I have that thought, oh, wait, I don't have to fix these people or their problems. And the minute I do, the love is there. I can just relax and love them.
Yes. Isn't that great? People are perfectly perfect just where they're at, because we're all
Right.
here to experience, and we're all here to just be right where we're at.
Right.
Which is so awesome. It's so awesome. So when you're giving God your to-do list and you let go of all of the things that you have on your to-do list, and God says, okay, well, go do this for this person. And then all of a sudden you get the most amazing gift from just out of the blue. How does that make you feel? And does that reinforce the love that you feel from God?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you have a story how
yeah.
that happens for you?
I had some time alone. My husband had gone up to Alaska, and we were living in West Virginia at the time. And I had a couple of weeks by myself. I had signed up to go to a 3-day silent retreat. Mm-hmm. And my husband loves to garden. So I'd promised him I would pick all the tomatoes and can them. Have you ever canned tomatoes? Yeah. It's a job.
No, I have not, but I've heard.
Yeah, it's a job. And also, I really like to get enough sleep. If you're a mother of 8, there's been too many years without enough sleep. So that's how I'm thinking. I'm going to get these tomatoes canned. I'm getting to bed early. And then tomorrow I'm going to this 3-day silent retreat. And I got up with my question, what do you want me to do today, God? And it was go to town this afternoon. And always lived in the country. So we're talking 30-minute drive to town and then 30 minutes back. And I thought, no, I don't think I have to go today. And then the thought came again, like I said, 3 times. And I thought, oh, this must be you. Yes, I want you to go to town. I was like, all right, should I go right now? He goes, no, go at 5 tonight. That's the thought that came in, go at 5 tonight. So I back calculated my canning time. I get in the car at 5 o'clock, still with some tomatoes to be canned, and maybe before 5. And I get out of my rural area onto the freeway, and I see this woman walking down the road. And maybe after a couple miles after I got on the freeway, and I thought, oh my gosh, if I'd gotten out in time, I could have picked her up sooner. And then I realized it was a young man. I get this young man in my car, and he was so hot and sweaty. This is June, July in West Virginia, which is hot and sweaty and humid. And he's telling me his whole story. And I said, listen, I can take you 20 miles down the road. I'm going to the bank, and there's a truck stop there. I can let you off there and you can get a ride there. And it was okay. Yeah, he was fine with that. And he said, I haven't had a ride all day. Like, I've walked 30 miles and I'm hot, so thanks. And then he tells me his whole story, and I'm like, well, you made some mistakes there, bud. But you know, I was like the age of my youngest son. I was kind of like, And so as I go to let him out, I could feel the spirit say, give him $20. The spirit never tells me to give people money, but I was like, okay. So I hand him $20 and say, whatever you need. And he gets out of the car. And as I drive away, I felt the spirit say, see how much I love that young man. And I thought, I do. And I did feel good. But because I got home and realized now I wasn't going to get to bed till midnight because I had to cancel those tomatoes, I was kind of upset. And I was saying, well, why did you send me? And he said, didn't you feel blessed? I said, yeah, I did feel blessed, but someone else could have felt blessed. Like, why didn't you send someone else? Which is part of the reason I spread this message, because I'm like, well, if everyone was up praying that question, someone else could have given him a ride and I could have got enough sleep. So that's kind of where I am about this. And years later, I was finally, I think he got tired of my asking. I said, just why did I have to be the one who went? And he said, because I knew I could trust you to go.
Oh,
And that does make me feel good.
yeah. That's so awesome.
And you hear what a whiny complainer I am. When I belong to writers groups and I'll bring my stories in, and I went to a new writers group, and I guess the woman didn't realize it's a memoir. And so as she read it, she said, you know, I don't think much of your main character. She's very selfish and whiny. Well, you know, it's a memoir, right?
That's funny.
I know. So if he could do it with me, imagine what he could do with you.
That brings up a really good point. Has there ever been a time where you have told God, no, I'm not going to do that? And what was the outcome of that?
We ran a small business where we had a product that we shipped over the internet. And when it first started, we were shipping out of our garage. And so we shipped every Monday, but we didn't ship over the weekends. And Monday was always a big day. And all my to-do list started with ship the orders, like ship the orders.
Mm-hmm.
And that was never questioned. And then one Monday I got up and it was, don't ship the orders today. And I thought, let's talk about integrity. God, like it says on our website, we ship the next business day and we're shipping the orders. That's how I was. And it was a busy day. It would have been good if I hadn't shipped the orders, because I did get a little stressed that day. So I got the orders done and I drove them down to the post office. And in the US, federal holidays are always Monday. And I had forgotten that it was President's Day and the post office was closed. So, yes, I could have shipped the orders the next day.
Ooh, and he's probably like, ha, ha. Told you not ship the orders.
But it wasn't a bad thing that anything was destroyed because I didn't do it. But
yeah,
it did help me to realize I really can trust that voice, even when I think it's a mistake.
That's pretty awesome. I love that. Wow. So how can people, if they've never heard God's voice or they've never really learned to trust that voice, that intuition, how can they start doing that? And how do they know the difference between their own ADHD voice and God's voice? What's the difference?
So the first thing I did was say, help me to hear your voice, because I don't know if I know how to hear it. I'm not sure. And immediately over the next week, I had experiences where I had, like I said, a thought. That's why I know a thought will come 3 times or 4, because a thought came, invite some people to dinner like a day later. And I was, nope, no, it's Monday. And actually we just had them come to dinner Friday. So who would do that? And then a thought came again, invite them to dinner. And again, I thought, no, because tonight's the night that we have private time with just our little children, and we have like gospel study. So the thought came the 3rd time, invite them to dinner and invite them to stay for your gospel study. So that's when I thought, oh, wait, is this God? Maybe this is God. And so I did invite them to dinner, and they came, and they're Christian and they wanted to start paying tithing. And our lesson was on tithing. And I don't think they would have told us this story if they hadn't stayed for our little lesson on tithing with our children. And you know how blessed you are when you play tithing. And so they had decided to pay tithing, and they had gotten behind. I don't recommend trying to catch up on tithing, just start where you are and go forward, but they were trying to catch up. And so they had enough of a check come in that they could buy food or pay tithing. And they had a decision to make, and they finally decided to just pay the tithing. And before the end of that day that they had paid the tithing, they had invitations to dinner every night of the week, except one, Monday, the night I was told, invite them to dinner. I only remember that one, but about 3 things like that happened that week, where everything I did, people said to me, I've been praying for this. You're the answer to my prayer, what you just did. And so that helped me begin to recognize that voice. But again, it's time. It's just time and practice.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty amazing. Wow.
And I would journal sometimes when I was having a hard time getting the answer. I will start writing what I'm thinking. And at some point I think, oh, this isn't me.
Mm-hmm.
This is God now talking.
Very cool. Well, how can people find you? Where can they find your books?
I have a website, inhisfootsteps.com, and it has the 2 books and the 3rd one that's coming out. And it has my social media links, and a tiny little thing will pop up in the corner. I don't take the whole screen that says, hey, sign up for my newsletter. And my newsletter comes out once a month. I don't spam you because I'm too old and too tired and lazy. So once a month is what you're getting. And it usually has a story, like some of the stories I shared today, with a little bit of a point and a little update on where the 3rd book is in process.
Very cool. I love it. My last question that I ask everybody, if you were in your favorite spot somewhere, on your favorite bench, and you had an opportunity to sit and talk with someone for an hour, whether that person be in this world or in heaven, who would that person be and what would you talk about for an hour?
It's probably Jesus.
Mm-hmm. What would you talk about?
What he sees my life as being about, what he sees. Show me where I'm making a difference in the world.
Oh, I can tell you that. I can hear him telling you right now.
Really?
Oh yeah, your books. Yeah.
Just for people to start to listen to that voice and really trust it. You can spend the rest of your life busily running around doing things that don't fulfill you, or you could start to turn it over to him. And what I got was the most fulfilling, beautiful life.
That's amazing. That's awesome. It's joyful.
It is joyful.
It's joyful. Everybody should have a joyful life. That's what we're here for. It's what we deserve.
I wish Putin would do it.
Oh, well, Margaret, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been such a pleasure having you on.
Thanks,
and
Amy.
our chat. I love it. Well, I will have your website and your books on the show notes as well. So if anyone would like to read that, they can find it there. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to Butterfly Kisses podcast, a journey of spiritual transformation. We hope today's episode has sparked new thoughts, offered fresh perspectives, or simply entertained you. Remember, the conversation doesn't have to end here. Connect with us on social media, share your thoughts, and stay engaged. Also, share it with a friend. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep embracing the journey of spiritual transformation. Take care, and we'll catch you on the next episode. See ya!